Today's episode is brought to you by Nomad, voted the Flathead's best manufacturer. Nomad is a longtime supporter of the local community and sports scene, celebrating 20 years of building great careers in mission-focused custom vehicles. Nomad, a Montana-based company making a global impact. Visit nomadgcs.com for more info. That's nomadgcs.com for more information. Welcome back to another episode of the Interlake Sports Now. I'm Josh Dugan, and thank you as always for taking out the time to check out the show. We'll start things out with another fall sports update with some local volleyball, soccer, and football action from the high school scene. Then we'll talk some Griz and Cats football, where I'll give one key takeaway from the Griz and Cats entering Big Sky play this upcoming weekend. So starting it out, let's just dive right into the fall sports update. We have some volleyball news. Glacier moved to 4-0 in Western AA play over the weekend after beating Butte. Sarah Downs had 16 kills, and Haven Spear provided all 40 team assists for the Wolfpack, who are now 7-3 overall on the season. While Flathead moved to 2-2 in Western AA volleyball play over the weekend after picking up 2 wins, one over Butte and one over Missoula Big Sky. Kendall Kartoffel, Sienna Stirk, and Anna Bain all played key roles in the Bravettes' victories. In soccer news, the Whitefish Bulldogs split their weekend matchup with Hamilton as the boys' soccer team moved to 7-0 with a 4-0 win over the Bronx. Ryder Elliott was key for the Bulldogs with a pair of goals. Meanwhile, the Whitefish girls lost their matchup with the Bronx 2-1. It was their first loss of the season, and now they sit at 7-1. Delaney Smith scored the lone Bulldogs goal. In Class AA action, Glacier swept their series with Butte as the Wolfpack boys and girls both won 10-0. That's hard to do. Liam Els had a hat trick for Glacier boys, and Reagan Brizadine had a huge game for the girls with 5 goals in the victory. Scoring half your team's goals on the way to 10 total, that's almost impossible to do. So very impressive wins for Glacier. Moving on to the prep football scene, starting with Whitefish, who picked up a 20-14 overtime win over rival Columbia Falls in the annual Cat Dog football game. Bulldogs QB Carson Golick had 3 touchdown passes on the day. He hit CJ through for 2 touchdowns, one of 25 yards and one of 67 yards. And Mason Ketch hauled in the game-winning touchdown on a 10-yard reception in OT. So, impressive win for the Bulldogs over their rival, Columbia Falls. Big Fork ran away from Libby for a 41-6 win in Class A play. Vikings QB Tristan Herr connected with Eli Thornes, who had a huge day. Thornes finished with 3 touchdowns, 5 grabs total, 155 yards. So you catch 5 balls, 3 of them are touchdowns. It's a heck of a day. Hurd finished with an efficient 176 yards passing and 4 total touchdowns, while the Vikings offense racked up 411 yards total. Another big win for Big Fork. Always love saying that. As for the Class AA schools, Glacier bounced back from their first loss of the season versus Butte a week ago with a 35-7 win over Helena. Griz commit Cash Gochea ran for 3 touchdowns for the Wolfpack on 9 total carries. Talk about efficient. And Cohen Kostelitz hauled in 7 catches for 166 yards to help Glacier run away from Helena. Kobe Dorchis, added 106 yards rushing and a touchdown. So overall, just a strong game from the Glacier running back room. Huge rushing attack, and sophomore QB, who was the one hitting Costello, who had a huge game. He had a great game too, 19-28 passing for 289 yards and the touchdown of Costello. So overall, Glacier's 3-1, 1-1 in Western AA play, and a serious contender to make a run towards a state title or make a deep playoff run without a doubt. Next up, the Flathead Braves had a Thursday night slate versus Missoula Sentinel, and the Spartans picked up a 46-7 win at home. Flathead QB Brett Pasola connected with Stephen Riley for a 21-yard touchdown in the 4th quarter for the Braves' lone score of the day. Flathead wideout Brody Thornsberry, was solid as usual, finishing with 4 catches for 90 yards for the Braves. The Braves are now 1-3 on the season. All right, that was your fall sports update. Let's get to a quick message from our friends at Nomad and then dive into a little Griz and Cats football action as Big Sky play is set to kick off this upcoming weekend. All right, on to that college football action. From the Treasure State, I'm going to get to one takeaway from the Griz and Cats each entering Big Sky Conference play. So let's start out with the Griz. My biggest takeaway from the Griz so far is Coach Bobby Hauck and the Montana Grizzlies. They're poker players right now. They're playing a little poker right now. They don't want to show anybody what cards are in their hand right now. They are not giving anything up. They're doing a lot of bluffing. They're listing 2 QBs as starting quarterbacks. Sam Vidlak and Clifton McDowell are listed as co-starters. Ever since the official depth chart came out, that's been the case. Vidlak, got to start week 1. Then McDowell played the majority of the second half week 1. All right. Game number 2, McDowell in the start, and he played the majority of the game. And then we move into week 3 as far as meaningful time. And then week 3, the carousel continues. It's back to Sam Vidlak, and we barely saw any Clifton McDowell. So I have a theory that Coach Bobby Hauck has some tricks up his sleeve. He has a good idea of what that quarterback room is going to look like come conference play, and he just has not want to show his hand one bit. And I understand the approach. My only question moving forward for the Griz and this offense is, do they need to establish a little bit more continuity, a little more of a rhythm heading into conference play? Because it felt like McDowell and the rushing attack were dominant the first 2 weeks. Then in week 3, McDowell had limited action, 2 carries for 4 yards. Understand, maybe on those 2 carries, Coach Hauck didn't like what he see. Maybe, as I said, a bit of a poker player. There could be a lingering injury or something like that with McDowell that they're not announcing to the media, and they just wanted to get him some reps so it looks like he's not dealing with anything. Who knows? But it makes you ask the question. I think once conference play begins, the Griz are definitely ready to unleash a few tricks up their sleeve. Vidlak in that Fair State game was 9 for 15, passing 105 yards and an interception. So it's not like they were lighting it up through the air. I was really surprised not to see Clifton McDowell a little bit more. But the real question is, and my biggest takeaway is, what will ace poker player Bobby Hauck have up his sleeve this upcoming week and throughout conference play? Only time will tell. The Grizzlies do need more continuity on offense. Last year, we at times saw the Griz offense struggle with consistency. So that would be my only concern as a coach's perspective. Completely understand wanting to play the game. You don't want to give your opponents an upper hand. You want to have a secret weapon or two or a couple tricks up your sleeve. But that being said, the offense struggled versus Fair State, and you need to establish a rhythm going into conference play so you don't get to that point when you do start playing the top-tier teams in the Big Sky. You're still figuring it out. You got to have that figured out. Like I said, I think they're playing a little bit of poker. I think they have a good idea of how that 2 QB approach is going to look come conference play. But so far, in 3 games from the Griz, they have not been willing to give their hand at all. And I couldn't tell you heading into week 4, beginning of conference play, who's the starter? Who's going to get the next rep? You never know. So that's a good problem to have at times. You look at Sac State last year. They had a lot of success running a 2 QB system. Took them all the way to a Big Sky co-conference title and a deep playoff run. So you look at Sac State and the way they did it, the Griz could be looking at that and going, we got one guy who's a great passer, one guy who's a dynamic runner. How do we find the blend of the two to utilize their talents? Because I'm going to make a bold prediction here. Down the stretch, we see McDowell carry the ball close to 10 times per game, an efficient 10 times per game. Look for him to be the kind of guy you see near the goal line, adding up those touchdowns, kind of like Sean Chambers with the Bobcats. And look for Vidlak to start ripping it 20-plus times per game because they got to let it rip and figure out exactly what they have in this offense. So I think the 2 QB approach can work. We saw it with Sac State. We see it with the Bobcats becoming more and more popular at the college level, especially NFL. We don't see it. Across college football, though, right guys in the right system with the right pairing, it can work. And I think McDowell and Vidlak complement each other well. They both have the potential to really help this Grizzlies team. We'll see what Bobby Hauck has in mind moving forward in this Grizzlies offense. Brent Pease, offensive coordinator. Like I said, I think they have a few tricks up their sleeve, but so far they are not showing anybody their hand as Big Sky conference play begins. I think it'd be a 50-50 bet who you see starting week 4. I couldn't tell you. So that's my takeaway from the Griz. Not a bad takeaway, but just a little bit of a Coach Bobby Hauck is really not wanting to give anything up, and I think that there's a lot of benefits to that from preparing, not letting your opposition prepare for your team, keeping the Griz opponents off guard. But the Fair State game, I got to raise an eyebrow a little because they didn't use McDowell much after he was so great the first 2 weeks. So we'll see once Big Sky play begins if he's just been playing poker, Coach Hauck, or maybe the Grizzlies are leaning towards using one quarterback, or maybe they're just figuring it out on the fly. But I have a feeling playing a little poker. Poker face, got to do it sometimes. All right. As for the Bobcats, so they're good enough. This is my takeaway. The Bobcats are good enough to beat up on the bottom of the pack in the Big Sky with or without Tommy Malott. But when it comes to winning another Big Sky title, making another deep playoff run, which is the expectation of Bobcat fans at this point, if you're a Bobcat Nation kind of guy, you expect guy or gal, you expect real success from this team because they've done it year in and year out the last few years. Brett Vegan has a machine-like system, it feels like. Taylor Housewright, offensive coordinator, has them rolling. A lot of good things. Here's my takeaway, though. I think the Bobcats really need to make an effort to take some of the pressure off both Tommy Mellott and Sean Chambers, especially during the lower level of play in Big Sky play, lower level teams, I should say, because they need to keep this machine rolling when it matters the most. True freshman running back, I just coined the name the other day, scoring Scott Trey Humphrey, got touchdown Tommy Mellott, scoring Scott Trey Humphrey, has a ring to it, maybe not, has the potential to break out as a star for the Bobcats. In 3 games, he has 6 rushing touchdowns. Hit the mic there. He has 6 rushing touchdowns. So I expect Humphrey to be a guy down the stretch, although he's a true freshman. Look for his workload to increase. He could be one of the guys who takes that pressure off of Mellott and Chambers. Because at the end of the day, you can go in and you can beat up on the bad teams. You look up this upcoming week, the Bobcats travel to Ogden to start Big Sky play. Weber State, that's a tough matchup between 2 top 10 teams in the FCS. So they're probably going to need to lean on their running quarterbacks in this one. You need Mellott and Chambers, although Tommy Mellott was listed, I believe, as not playing. So point being, you can have these guys miss one important regular season game versus a top-tier opponent. But when it's going down the stretch in Big Sky Conference play and you have a trip to Sac State on the road versus Sac State, that's a tough game, October 21st for the Bobcats. And the following week at Idaho, October 28th, tough game. And then, of course, the Brawl of the Wild in Missoula on November 18th. Those are the 3 games that could define the Bobcats season, and you need those 2 dynamic runners on the field. So my question is, when you play a Portland State, when you play a Cal Poly, who they will play the following 2 weeks after Weber State, how do you add some wrinkles in the passing game? How do you implement a couple new guys to take the pressure off Mellott and Chambers and limit their snaps while keeping them the well-oiled machine that the Bobcats offense is? So that's my takeaway. The Bobcats have the talent and the depth and the coaching to, again, make a deep run in the playoffs and compete for a Big Sky title. The question mark is, will they have their 2 key quarterbacks when it matters most, Mellott and Chambers? Because, truthfully, I think if either of those guys goes down, it really hurts the Bobcats' chances. And if Mellott in particular, with him out right now, we're going to learn a lot about Sean Chambers and see what he could do as the go-to guy. He had a lot of success in the past. When he's gotten the opportunity, he had some success at Wyoming. So I'm not saying it's all bad, but the point being is you want both those guys healthy when it matters most. How do the Bobcats prevent the injuries to their stars? That's my biggest takeaway. So a lot to break down there, a lot to digest, but you got Weber State coming up. Tommy Mellott's out, like I said. You can drop one game maybe versus a ranked opponent, but the Bobcats already lost one to South Dakota State. All of a sudden, you start adding up the losses. Even though they're quality losses, you could say, because it's a top 10 team in the FCS, this is the kind of program that is shooting for bigger things and going for an FCS title after falling short the last 2 years. You need Tommy Mellott. You need Sean Chambers when it matters most. So like I said, I have a lot of respect for Coach Vegan and that organization, or program, I should say, and what they do. Running the football is so impressive with their quarterbacks. But you got to add a wrinkle in to keep those guys healthy when it matters most, because you can't have Tommy Mellott going down week 2 versus South Dakota State. I know you want to win that game, but at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, that game's not going to matter. What matters is playoff time, Big Sky title on the line. Those are the games that the Cats, I know that you circle the calendar, you want to get that one back for South Dakota State, get them back in the playoffs when you're healthy. So that's going to be the biggest concern. That's my biggest takeaway is they need Tommy Mellott and Sean Chambers when it matters most down the stretch. Alrighty, y'all. That's been quite the breakdown. I'm kind of ranting a little bit about the Griz and the Cats, but I'm hyped for Big Sky football to take off. Make sure you're checking out the Big Sky Now, our new show on the Hagadone Sports Network. Fellow peers, fellow sports reporters from the Northwest here jumping on there this upcoming week to break down some Big Sky football. You'll want to check that out. Follow me on Twitter at jdugan406 to keep up to date with that. But that'll do it for this week's episode of the Interlake Sports Now. I'm Josh Dugan, and I'm out. Thank you as always for listening, y'all. Have a good one, and enjoy another epic weekend of Northwest Montana sports, and it's some good Griz and Cats football on the horizon. It's going to be fun. As always, y'all. Today's episode is brought to you by Nomad. Go to the Flathead's best manufacturer. Nomad is a longtime supporter of the local community and sports scene, celebrating 20 years of building great careers and mission-focused custom vehicles. Nomad, a Montana-based company making a global impact. Visit nomadgcs.com for more info. That's nomadgcs.com for more information.